Welcome back to Lifelens TV, fellow patriots, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this video finds you in good health, God willing.
Niko njaa hata siwezi karanga, uwe hai shagala bagala, niko tayari kulipa gharama, sitasimama.
For years, we've voiced our concerns about poor leadership, corruption, scandals, and injustices. Today, however, we're focusing on solutions. It's time we ask ourselves, how can we break free from this endless cycle of suffering? What role do we, the youth, play in reshaping Kenya's future? Join me as we explore these questions together. Sometimes the very people who suffer are the ones responsible for bringing these problems upon themselves. Take a moment to reflect on this. We've had leaders in the past who meant well for this country, people like Raila Odinga, who has always stood for progress and justice. He tried 4 times, and each time, the people rejected him. Worse still, some went as far as insulting him, calling him names, Muganga, claiming he was a witch doctor. But what did the voters do? They turned their backs on a man with good intentions and chose what they believed was God's chosen, William Ruto. From 2013 to 2022, scandals trailed him, but Kenyans seemed to forget all too soon. He was even fired as the Minister of Agriculture for a maize scandal. Yet when 2022 came around, many acted as if all of that never happened. Leaders like COTU Secretary-General Francis Atwoli repeatedly warned Kenyans, reminding them that Ruto was not fit to lead.
Ni ya kwamba yeye kama deputy president, hicho ni cheo kikubwa sana. Anachukua simu, anapigia mtu mdogo sana kwa parastatal ama kwa ofisi yoyote ya serikali, anamwambia hiyo tenda nimesema upatie fulani. Na mtu anachukua mamilioni ya serikali, anapeana namna hivyo na pesa zinaenda.
But did they listen? No. I still remember the words that ring in my mind to this day. Wachana na mwizi wetu, leave our thief alone. And that sentiment, my friends, is where we as Kenyans went wrong. When former President Uhuru Kenyatta, who knew Ruto best, tried to warn us, we brushed it off as political rivalry. But think about it. Who better to warn us about a man than his own close ally? Uhuru had worked alongside Ruto for years, and he knew what we didn't. He saw the cracks in the leadership, but we turned a blind eye. Now, as we sit here today, the reality is sinking in. We are living through the consequences of ignoring those warnings. The youth are the ones suffering the most, paying the price for decisions they didn't fully understand. But the big question remains, what's the solution? We, the youth, need to come together. It's time to draw a line in the sand and say enough is enough, and know the solution isn't destroying our country with violent protests. That won't help us in the long run. Instead, we need to educate ourselves and our peers. Let's get those voter cards ready. Let's ensure that every eligible youth has their ID. Let's plant the seed of change in our hearts now, so that by the time 2027 comes around, we've grown into a strong, united voting bloc that stands for one thing, a new face for leadership. It's time we look for leaders who represent hope and progress, not recycled figures from the past. People like Morara Kabaso, who stands for civic education and building, not burning bridges. Someone who understands the power of bringing people together and who won't disappear when things get tough. We don't need leaders like Samuel Makur, who excites the masses with big talk but hides when the real action begins. How many times has Makur called for demonstrations only to leave Gen Z stranded hiding behind his own comfort? We need serious, grounded leadership. Look around. There are those like Kabaso who embody the spirit of growth, of building something real and lasting. It's not enough to tear down. We need to create. And let's talk about the so-called veteran politicians. People like Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa, and Martha Karua. These are leaders who haven't served in the current government of William Ruto, but let's not forget, They've been part of previous regimes that were no better than what we see today. Take Kalonzo Musyoka, for instance. He was once the vice president of this country. What exactly is he going to tell us now that he didn't have the chance to do when he held one of the highest offices in the land? He's had his time, and nothing changed. He has played both sides of the political game, shifting alliances when it suited him. So why should we believe that he suddenly has the solutions we need? It's time for Kalonzo to step aside and let new voices emerge. He's part of the old guard that has kept us in this cycle of stagnation. Then there's Eugene Wamalwa. Now, Wamalwa is here trying to position himself as some kind of champion for truth and justice, criticizing the Ruto government. But where was this voice when he was comfortably serving under Uhuru Kenyatta's administration? He was part of the very government that was indistinguishable from the Ruto administration. If Eugene Wamalwa was truly committed to the truth, why didn't he speak out then? What moral high ground does he stand on now? It's hypocrisy, plain and simple. We don't need leaders who speak only when it's convenient for them. If Wamalwa had any integrity, he would have spoken up during his time in office. Instead, he was silent, complicit in the very issues he now claims to oppose. We don't need more of that. And Martha Karua, let's not forget her role in the disputed 2007 election. Today she's out here telling us that Ruto is an illegitimate president, that he stole the election. But where was this moral outrage when she stood by Mwai Kibaki in 2007, defending an election that a child in kindergarten could tell you Raila Odinga won? Karua had no problem supporting a rigged election back then, but now she wants to talk about fairness and justice? She lacks the moral authority to lecture us on democracy. It's time for her to step aside as well. She's been part of the problem for too long, and we need new leaders who haven't been tainted by these past regimes. So when we look at people like Kalonzo, Wamalwa and Karua, we have to ask, what exactly are they offering us now that they couldn't deliver when they were in power? The truth is, they've had their chance, and they failed. They are relics of a broken system. We don't need them anymore, and they certainly don't deserve to lead the charge for change. It's time for them to disappear from our political landscape entirely. Kenya deserves fresh faces, new ideas, and leaders who aren't part of the same old revolving door of political failure. Kenyans, we've heard these stories before. As the late President Kibaki once said, "You cannot suddenly become clever." We can no longer be fooled by the same old faces. If you've been part of the government, even as a janitor, it's time to step aside. We, the youth, want one of our own to rise and lead. But even as we look for new faces, we remain cautious. History has taught us that power can corrupt even the best intentions. As George Orwell warned us in Animal Farm, those who rise to power often become indistinguishable from the tyrants they replace. That's why, in 2027, we won't just bank all our hopes on one person. We will form a voting bloc, a united force of young people determined to see change. With our numbers, we have the power to shape the future of this nation. But we must do it right. We must educate, mobilize, and stand firm. It's time we take charge, and not only for our generation, but for those to come. The future of Kenya is in our hands, and it's time to step up. And now, let's address the elephant in the farm, William Ruto. Look, it's not going to be easy to remove him from power, but if we stand firm, united and determined, we can make it happen. Remember, it's the same collective spirit that saw us occupy Parliament in protest. That showed our strength, our capability and our potential. If we put aside our divisions, tribalism, politics of tokenism, where people are enticed by a few coins, selling their dignity and future for 5 years of suffering, we can send Ruto home. Think about it, those few shillings you get in exchange for your vote, they cost you 1,120 days of hardship. That's 5 long years of struggling to make ends meet while the very leaders who bribed you live in luxury. Are a few coins really worth years of suffering? We need to break away from this cycle where we trade our future for short-term gains. And we can only do that by coming together, as one people, regardless of tribe, regardless of our differences, and demanding real change. The power is in our hands. We are more than capable of shaping the future we want, but we must refuse to be divided. We must refuse to be bought off by the same leaders who have let us down over and over again. It's time to think long-term, to stand up for our rights and to make sure that those in power know they work for us and not the other way around. We can send Ruto home, but only if we unite for the greater good. It's time to build a new Kenya, one where leadership isn't about which tribe you come from or how much money you can hand out during campaigns. It's about integrity, vision, and accountability. We, the youth, have the numbers. We have the power. And if we use it wisely, if we reject the politics of corruption and greed, we can create a future where we don't just survive, we thrive. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we leave it today. The change we seek won't come from waiting on old faces or hoping for someone else to fix things. It's up to us. We are the solution. Peter Tosh Williams, who brought these ideas to light, believes in a new Kenya, one led by the youth, educated and empowered to create a future we can be proud of. If this message resonates with you, share it, talk about it, and most importantly, act on it. This is our time. Thank you for watching Lifelines TV, and until next time, let's keep pushing for the Kenya we deserve.